He said he told him at 27.
That was for the Hill Creek project.
Hill Creek project.
Yeah. Has Krasny not fixed you?
Yeah, I think,
We okay now?
no, we, I
You got a thumbs up.
Okay.
Oh, just.
We're going to call the Village of Gates Mills Council meeting for November 21st to order.
Atten,
Yeah.
Allward,
Here.
Deacon,
Present.
Press,
Present.
Steinbrink,
Here.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Here.
Thank you. Next, I need a motion for Janet to be our clerk pro tem. Sandra? So moved.
Second.
Atten,
Yes.
Allward,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
This is because Beth's out of town. Next is the minutes from the regular council meeting of October 17th.
I have one change from Councilmember Atten on your page 3 or page 2, I'm sorry. Immediately before Councilmember Turner added achievement as one of 6, actually 5 variables that are considered in the overall rating. He would like inserted MCS was ranked 16th out of 31 districts in Cuyahoga County in terms of achievement, unchanged from a year ago.
Was that said during the meeting?
Certainly was.
Well, I don't have a problem with it being added if it was said, but I
Well,
think
what-
ad hoc changes to the minutes,
Well, you
would
could
be
check
in
the
favor
video.
of.
And while we're on it, David, we can add your email to this month's minutes, but we can't really add to the last month
Well, that's
because it
great.
wasn't
That's
discussed.
fine. That's fine. If you would do that, I'd be grateful.
If council says, right? So
What
I
else?
guess I need to know if we have a motion to approve as amended.
So, moved.
Second.
Atten,
Yes.
Allward,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes,
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is pay ordinance 1279 for $636,740.05.
Move to approve.
second,
Press and Steinbrink.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, this is a lot for me right now. Atten,
Yes.
Allward,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
yes,
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is, I'm going to do an introduction of Mary Ann Haller from the Gates Mills Library. You want to stand up, Mary Ann? She came, this is our new branch manager.
Welcome.
So, I was just gonna say a couple things real quick.
Yes, go ahead.
As of last week, I am.
Move the microphone down. Yeah,
Thank
there you go. Thank you.
As of, 5'2.5", but 5'3" on good days. I am the new manager at the Gates Mills Branch Library. Very fortunate position for me. We have a wonderful staff over there. We very much look forward to serving the whole village. Information, education, entertainment, library needs. I've been with Cuyahoga County Public Library for almost 20 years and have worked at 6 different branches. And I had a short time here back in 2012, just for a few months, and remember it as being a wonderful experience. So I'm happy to be back. I also had the opportunity a few weeks ago to look at the Village Comprehensive Plan for 2023. And I believe the library is going to be an important part of the maintaining and enhancing the village center as a place for community interaction. That is right in step with our mission. We look forward to working on that. Besides just physical and digital materials, we have computers for public use, copied and faxing services, meeting space, and a whole lot more. So we are always looking for ways to partner with the community. Please stop in, introduce yourself, and let us know how our staff can help you. And I do have some program guides that I'll leave on the back table if anyone, these are for the entire system. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So Mary Ann, how is activity? Sandra Turner, member of council.
Yes.
How is activity at the Gates Mills Library?
It's doing very well right now. I think, after the pandemic,
COVID.
things have slowly come back. And we are happy to have our children's librarian back. She just came back from maternity leave, so with the story times will pick back up. And today was a busy day. I think a lot of people have family in town, some grandchildren in with grandparents to choose some books, that type of thing. So and circulation has been going up,
Been good.
so it's really, really good.
Good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you,
Welcome.
everyone. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
And thank you, Mike. I got the letter you sent, or email you sent, I should say. And we did improve the door to Burton Court and made it soundproof. And Mary Ann's approved it. It's really good. Thank you. Next is Amber Greenleaf, who's joining us from Rita with a summary of House Bill 33, which is the new tax code amendments. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mind if I say?
Yes, Todd?
You had asked for a representative of Rita to be present tonight. And I've worked with Amber in the past. She's been very helpful. She is the general counsel now of Rita. Amy Origi, who was longtime general counsel, of course, moved up to be executive director. And Amber's been a real delight to work with, not only in this community, but other communities.
Thank you. Good evening, council. So unless anybody has any specific questions, which we can get to either now or after, I was thinking I'd just kind of go through the changes that we're making now. The General Assembly in the budget bill, which was House Bill 33, made some changes. And the General Assembly requires that we implement those changes in our ordinances. Some of them have to be made, others don't, but considering we want our ordinances to mirror Chapter 718, which governs municipal income tax, we advise that all these updates be made. So the first is the age exemption, which is an across-the-board exemption for those under 18. Now, some up to this point, municipalities were permitted to decide whether or not they wanted to exempt under 18. It could be 16. They had the option to decide how they wanted to treat those taxpayers. Now, this is ending that, and there's an across-the-board exemption. The Village of Gates Mills had already exempted under 18, so this isn't a change for you, but this is something we had sent out to most of our all of our members, to make this change if they hadn't already done so and adopted that treatment of those taxpayers. The second, without getting too much into the weeds, is regarding net profit allocation. So during the pandemic, the General Assembly put something into place that allowed businesses with net profits. It made it easier for them to file with people working from home. So for net profit purposes, there's a 3-factor allocation in figuring out where net profits are to be paid into which municipality. And they look at 3 factors, which is payroll, services, and property. And they look at those 3. And since most employees were working from home, they allowed those employers to file net profit, considering not where the employees were actually doing the work, which was at their homes, but in the principal place of business. That treatment went away about a year ago, and this is the effort to make it Ohio more business friendly and get that treatment back. So there is some lengthy language that you will see included in your ordinance regarding the net profit allocation. It just allows these businesses to file in a quote unquote reporting location rather than allocating to each municipality where those employees are working. So that's a very lengthy change that you'll see in your ordinance. There's also an extension of the net profit deadline. So right now, net profit filers are required to file their extension by the 15th of October. They're now given until the 15th of November. So that's a nice little change for businesses. As far as correspondence goes, there is some language in there prohibiting municipalities from sending any correspondence to taxpayers prior to an extension deadline. So what, not Rita, but a lot of municipalities that do individual collection work will send out notices to their taxpayers before the extension deadline saying, hey, by the way, for say tax year 22, you were supposed to file your return. We have not seen that. Can you please send that in? Now they're prohibited from doing that. They have to wait until the extension deadline is up to send out those notices to taxpayers. If they do send them out and a taxpayer has to respond and there's any cost associated with that response, the tax administrator has to repay that individual taxpayer up to $150 of their costs associated with responding to the municipality. Let's see what else. Late filing penalty is a change you'll see in your ordinance. So right now, there's a late filing penalty of $25 per occurrence, and that continues up to $150. That's been changed to a flat $25 per occurrence, and there is a waiver of the first occurrence per municipality. So there's a change with regard to that penalty. And then there are a couple other changes that were required, but for our purposes, for the RETA model, as well as the Ohio Municipal League, their model, they don't have the language that needed a tweak. So there were two additional changes that the General Assembly required, but for your purposes, they're not required because they're not in your ordinance. So you don't have to worry about those. So I think I pretty much covered all of them. Let me just do a quick check to make sure I didn't miss anything, because there's quite a few. Yeah, that should be everything. So unless I'll open it up for questions. Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'll start the questions. Is there anything in the new House bill that would change the tax upward or downward for the individuals living in Gates Mills? And then I'm going to ask you the same question about businesses in Gates Mills. Could you take a shot at that?
So as far as changing, I mean, there's no change to the rate. I guess for purposes of individuals changing it up or down, you've already exempted the under 18, so that won't be a change. The only factor would be that penalty, changing it from $150 to $25. So for those who are filing late, it would be just a change overall, that they wouldn't be hit with that $150, and it would be capped out at the $25 per year that they filed a return late.
Thank you. Now, how about if you were a business in Gates Mills? Same question. Is there anything that would change the tax liability one way or the other in the new House bill?
Again, same with the penalty, that would apply to businesses as well. I mean, I really don't see huge changes, just for the fact that, again, with the net profit allocation, that was something they were already doing during the pandemic. So it's just kind of picking that treatment back up. So I don't see significant changes. Yeah, just changing in timing with regard to the extension deadlines. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the fact that we're changing the code has just caused us a little more focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
We seem to have in our code, we appoint every year a resident as our tax administrator, but our code also says, the code says that Rita is our tax administrator. Who is our tax administrator?
So
May I? Sure. This may be as much a question for Todd, so Amber can follow up, but our code does appoint Rita as official tax administrator. We have had a village tax administrator forever. And every year, as you noted, we appoint someone to do that. For the last many years, it's been Robert Reitman. He is seen as a liaison between the village and Rita, so that if village officials, residents have questions about tax and Bob can't answer those questions or is unable to, then he is the liaison to get people to Rita and the right person at Rita. I've talked to Bob many times. I talked to him again today, and he said, well, years ago, all of these municipalities have subcontracted out the village administrator position, is what we've done. And so that's the answer.
Okay. So Rita's role as tax administrator, can you elaborate on that role?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just do want to add to what Todd said is, you know, the Ohio Revised Code contemplates just a definition, you know, whether it's an appointment within the village or a third-party administrator, which is Rita. But in our COG agreement, when you join Rita, it also contemplates this relationship between the village and Rita. So we're administering together, and it does contemplate this kind of joint effort for purposes of municipal income tax collection with, we have our own member services department with government liaisons who work with, you know, members of the village to kind of get things resolved, and they can come to us and we can come to them. So it's a nice working relationship that we have. And we see that in almost every member municipality that we have. With regard to what we do for purposes of your administration, it's everything from registration to the filing of returns to, you know, reviewing those returns, processing the returns, unpaid balances, collecting compliance work, collecting on those balances through our collections department. We have an entire legal department. We have what we call our FTI department, which is our federal tax information department, which catches underreporters, people who are not reporting all of their income, or non-filers. So for instance, somebody should be filing with Gates Mills but isn't. We share information with the IRS and we see, well, they should be filing, and we send them letters and pursue them that way. So you're talking everywhere from the start of registering a new person who comes to the village all the way through offering collection through the legal department. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. We try to do as much as we can.
So you said something in that list, which was going to be a specific question. So you do compare the federal return with the local return and see if it's consistent
Yes, for purposes.
for
of
every taxpayer?
Yes, for underreporters, it's, you know, again, they left a certain amount of income off the return. We bounce that off against the information that was reported to the IRS to find those individuals. And then also those individuals who aren't filing and haven't filed, period, where we can see they have a Gates Mills address and aren't filing a return. And we send them letters and pursue them that way. We also offer a subpoena program, which we send out subpoenas for people who have previously filed returns and have stopped filing returns, and we believe are still in village limits, and we will pursue them that way as well. They're administrative subpoenas.
Now, definition of a non-resident.
Mhm.
Maybe this again is a question for Todd. Do we as a village have any discretion to define a non-resident, or do we follow state
Yeah.
law in that sense?
So that's resident and non-resident are both defined in the Ohio Revised Code as well as your ordinance. And, you know, your ordinance mirrors Chapter 718 state law. So those are very clear. As far as determining residency and what we call domicile, that's also provided in the Ohio Revised Code and state law. There's lengthy list of factors that we look at to determine who's where. And it's a review that's done. There's also a bunch of legal case law that's out there, you know, defining in what we look at and how it all works in coming up and making that determination.
Okay.
Roughly what percentage of your communities that you serve have a tax administrator of their own versus the ones that do not?
I don't have those statistics in front of me, but I can work on getting that for you. But I know that the majority of municipalities that I've worked with over the years, which is I've been with Rita almost 10 years now, have a tax administrator, finance director role.
Generally, my experience over 40 years working with probably at least a dozen communities as their law director or assistant law director, the finance director serves that capacity in cities and villages that have finance directors.
I'm currently the assistant tax administrator.
Okay, it's very nice to meet you.
This is Janet, by the way. So we discussed who Janet was today, so.
Could I ask a question, please? I'm David Atten, member of council. Looking at your website, a couple of questions come to mind. One is, do you offer services beyond the basic administration that we could pay for? I read that you offer services, and I wondered if they were discretionary and could be bought for a price? That's the first part of the question.
I guess I would wonder what you were looking, like what services you're referring.
Well, there were none specified, but it was in the who we are section of your website.
So,
It was ambiguous to me.
okay, so all the services that I mentioned earlier, from registration to, pursuing legally, all of that is included in our cost, which there's a formula that, so everything's included. The only portion that is not is our legal program, which, the only additional cost are court costs that have to be, paid initially by the village or city, and then are recouped from the taxpayer if we receive a judgment or paid by the judgment. And then any of our paralegals' time, which is only $35 an hour, and that's only when they're in court on your behalf. So those are the only additional costs.
My second,
We are part of that.
I'm sorry?
We are part of that.
Okay, so we take full benefit of all those services
Mhm.
for the price we pay. Okay, thank you. The second question, you talked earlier on about mirroring the state statute.
Yes.
I understand complying. I don't understand mirroring, because it seems to me that looking at your website again, and again, I'm not a tax person, that various municipalities deal with certain issues a different way
Mhm.
in their tax code. I mean, I don't know how much discretion there is and how much discretion there isn't.
So years ago, there was another House bill, which was House Bill 5, and there was an overhaul of municipal income tax. That was in 15, effective for tax year 16. And the whole goal was uniformity. And this is actually when I came on the municipal income tax scene and when I met Amy Arrighi. And it was, like I said, a complete overhaul with the goal of uniformity and not just ordinances and state law, but across municipalities. So things like penalty and interest, you were no longer allowed to pick and choose what you want, whether it was 18% or 3%, it was uniform. And the majority of the provisions where there was this discretion were made uniform to make things easier for taxpayers, businesses, individuals. There were items that were grandfathered in that you could continue your treatment that you had in the past, and that there are some items that you are still permitted to, for instance, stock options, non-qualified deferred compensation, different withholding, whether you wanted semi-withhold or semi-monthly withholding for employers. There are probably 7 or 8 of those where a municipality can still select their treatment, but it's very limited now compared to how it used to be, and that all came with House Bill 5.
But we do have some choices.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question, not necessarily for Amber, but I understand there's something like 57, 58, 60 businesses in the village, but Chuck Spear told me, I think Chuck Spear, speak for himself, that he personally pays something like 10% of the total amount of business taxation collected by the village. That sounds odd to me, with that many businesses and him constituting that larger percentage. Can you shed any light on that?
Well, so without having any background, I really couldn't weigh in, and plus I don't want to necessarily weigh in on anybody's personal tax liability before council. But no, it would be something I would have to look into.
If I were Chuck, I'd be worried.
Perhaps he makes a lot more than I thought.
That's the other end of it, right?
Obviously, it is paid about 9.4% of the total amount coming to us. But that's not, because there were 67 payroll protection loan payments in the village to address in Gates Mills, suggesting that we have more business than we're collecting tax from. But I understand that businesses can also deal correctly with the state, and the state can spend money. Is that true?
Yes, so that is correct. There is an opt-in provision that allows them to opt in to have the state tax commissioner act as the tax administrator for that business. They take in the return, they review the return, they audit the return, and then they dispense any money that's there and collect on it. And then we're just given the details and the payment afterwards.
But you must know about that, right? Because otherwise there would be a loophole where if there was a business and they weren't paying you, you wouldn't know whether they were paying the state or not. So you must be aware of that, right?
We do receive notices when those opt-ins occur.
Do you have
And
any
then-
idea what the liability is paid by businesses to Rita versus the amount that's paid directly to the state?
You're referring to how many have opted in for Gates Mills? I do not have that figure, but I can again get that for the
Just
council.
ballpark.
Make an offer.
Michael, just for your edification, because I had that same question and I asked Janet, our income statement has a line item called municipal income tax. There's two sources for that money, Rita and the state.
Oh,
Okay,
I did not understand that.
okay.
So we can get that number if you're interested from
Okay.
Janet as to how much is coming, but that
think
may
it's
not,
Worth looking, because it just seems odd that Chuck would constitute 9.4%.
right. Janet,
Although I'm very proud of it for paying it.
Janet, I did say that correctly?
Yes, we receive money from the state quarterly and monthly.
And what I can do, I can reach out to your government liaison and put them in contact with Janet to get some of these questions answered for you and get more detail for you.
One last comment, if I may. We are constantly frustrated by our inability to forecast our income tax revenues down the road. And we don't even understand the income taxes from the past completely. So seems to be a blockage against getting more information about where our income tax dollars actually come from. Not who pays them, but where they come from, what kind of person is it, and so on, LLCs and so on. And I guess you have to work under strict rules of confidentiality, and you have to draw a line as to what information you're prepared to share with people like us.
Mhm.
But it is a constant frustration, and it's sort of underlying all these questions. I think you ought to know that.
Thank you.
To build on David's comment, from my years on council, I've been told that we are particularly sensitive to high earners, particularly if they get extra compensation in a year. We get roughly 2 million a year in income taxes, and some swings from individuals can be $100,000 or $200,000. I, again, have no idea of specifics, but I've just heard those kind of numbers over time. I don't know what kind of data, without getting too specific, you guys can help us to track for the last 5 years. And I know we switched over to you, so I don't know how much history you can give us, but the top 5 earners contributed this percent of tax revenue each of the last 5 years, and we can tell whether that percentage, how much it's going up or down, or maybe there's ways to do some trending by categories rather than just one big number. I don't know, because as David said, it's almost a dartboard.
Well, and that's where you get into it gets more difficult, because if you start to limit to the top 5, it's becomes easier to identify who those individuals are. And the strict confidentiality of taxpayer information is our priority, should be yours. So we want to give it the utmost care. And that's where it does get difficult in trying to give you the figures that you want, while also being very mindful of that. So again, we can definitely work with the village. It's just getting creative.
If the top 5 is restricted for that shift, the top 50 would help too.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, and
Whatever
again,
threshold
we don't
is.
necessarily need to know that number, but I guess it'd be comfortable to know that somebody at Rita is looking at that kind of trend and
Mhm.
giving us, because this year we got 3 different numbers as the year progressed, and they were, off by $500,000, and the last one was too conservative, and it looks, we're already ahead of the last estimate through November. So
All
So
right.
it just seems to be all over the place, so it doesn't give us a lot of confidence that Rita has a better feel than we do, so
Understood.
so
I'll reach out to our government liaison to have them start working.
excellent.
Thank you.
So say a little bit more about what would happen as Janet works with the government liaison.
So you have a member of our team, of our member services team, that is assigned to your municipality and can answer any questions you may have, whether it's, you know, on a specific taxpayer account or just general data that can be for the village. And, you know, is there to come before council if there's questions, and just for the day-to-day questions as well.
Have you been in
Amber,
touch-
one-
have you been in touch with that person, Janet?
Oh, yeah, I have one contact. That's who I always deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Mao.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Amber, question on the apportionment of net profit. When is that, when are those, so you can start making an election effective end of this year?
Correct.
Well, could that affect, you know, fluctuations depending on how elections were made by businesses in, you know, in terms of forecasting revenue, do you think?
It's hard to say. Again, this is a treatment that was already in place, so I don't think the village is going to see a huge change, and because it was something that was in place during the pandemic.
There seemed to be quite a bit of wording in the bill about the words pension and retirement and all that sort of thing. Is there any significant change there you can tell us about?
So that was related to House Bill 166. That was a change that was effective for tax years 2020 and after. So there had been this long back and forth between taxpayers and CPAs and then municipalities as whether a pension and a certain type of income, what's called a SERP, supplemental and executive retirement plans, or golden parachutes, they're sometimes called, are exempt from municipal income tax. You know, obviously municipalities saying yes, they're taxable, CPAs, taxpayers saying they're exempt. This back and forth for years, there was case law that was out there that is, and there's one still pending that's working its way through. But the General Assembly stepped in, said, look, we're going to put a definition within the Ohio Revised Code, exempting it, taking it out effective tax year 2020 and after. So the treatment is taken out of your hands now.
Do you have any working relationship or connections with Central Collection Agency regarding the fact that happened to me 3 times, that when the accountants do the, you know, your taxes, they press the button and it's been set up for Central Collection Agency. They get it, and then you get a letter finally from Rita saying you didn't file, bad guy. Is there anything that you can do to develop a connection with them when they get these basically submissions, that they can reroute them over to you?
Needs to change.
So I guess that if you could just give some more information, are you referring to returns that were already filed with CCA?
New returns for the year.
Oh, so rather than a Rita them coming to Rita, they're going to
And they
CCA.
accidentally get sent over to.
Yeah, so we do have contact with CCA. We have contacts there, and they should be sending that information over to us.
Yes, it happened to me 3 times, and I get a Dunning letter from you saying you didn't file. And, you know, it's sitting over there in their bin. That's why I was wondering if there's some way they could just say, hey, you know, we've got this.
I would hope that they would send those to us, yes.
And I think you need to tell your accountant, Ed.
I think you might need to start filing with Rita rather than CCA.
Any other questions for Amber?
I just have a couple other comments to extol the virtues of Rita. I really appreciate their legal services. We get occasionally here and in other municipalities foreclosures on property. And if there's a municipal tax judgment lien for $500, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to handle those, and they jump right in and take care of those under those services. So that's been really helpful. And the other thing is they do make final determinations on taxpayers' requests for refunds and things like that. And once they make that final determination, then the taxpayer has the right to file an appeal with our local Board of Tax Review. And so that's only happened once since I have been law director, and I think only one time previous to that, probably the last 20 years in Gates Mills. But we do have a local Board of Tax Review.
I guess I have one final comment. That is that our tax administrator would have been here tonight. He told me, but he's having his 90th birthday party tonight. So good for him.
I want to thank Rita because I pushed to change from CCA to Rita, and it's been great because we've gotten so much more information than we could ever get out of CCA. I mean, it's just amazing. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And again, if there is anything else, always just reach out. We're there. And again, I'll have Matt Mao reach out. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take
Thank you
care.
for coming.
Thank you, Amber.
Okay, next is Sean Riley with our charter review report, which is was in your packet.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. As Mayor indicated, a copy of the report was provided to all of the council members. I'm going to try to summarize the report briefly and then open it up for any questions or comments. As a reminder, and it's spelled out in the report, we followed a particular process with our committee. We held 4 meetings. We reviewed charters of other communities, and then we distributed a questionnaire to former and current village officials. Received, I think, 7 or 8 responses to that questionnaire with some very good comments on it. The summary I provided breaks the proposed or possible changes into 2 large categories. The first is what we call substantive changes, and there are 4 of those, and then mechanical changes, which were for the most part suggested by our law director. In the substantive grouping, there were 4 possible changes we considered. The first dealt with the authority of council to change zoning. The second dealt with the authority of council to alter the income tax credit. The third addressed the possibility of enlarging the powers of the president pro temp of council. And then finally, there was consideration of reducing the size of council. I'll go through our decisions on those 4 and then just touch very briefly on the mechanical changes. With respect to changes of the zoning code, we considered whether to leave the ordinances the way or the charter the way it is, or introduce a citizen or voter vote on every change to any of the zoning code. We settled upon sort of a compromise position, which is that I think it was modeled on the Chagrin Falls Charter, which provides that if council is considering a change to the zoning code, it would hold a public meeting at which residents would be able to weigh in on the changes. And then it would proceed after that on its own. If after the change is made, a group of citizens were able to gather signatures from 10% of the voters, they could propose an initiative to repeal the zoning change. We proposed that as one possibility. I should note that Councilman Press had a different view and thought that all changes to the zoning code should go to voters. With respect to the income tax credit, we concluded as a group to make no changes, sort of taking into account that, in fact, as we just discussed here, there are constant variations in income tax collections, and we thought it best to leave it in council's hands as to whether or not to change the credit up or down. Again, Councilman Press took a different view and felt that the decision to change the income tax credit should reside in the voters' hands. With respect to the size of council, several people made the very good point that a community of 2,200 people having 7 council members seems a little extreme. But since we don't pay any of you, and we don't spend any extra money doing it.
Really?
And the other point was that a number of our council members over the years spend a significant amount of time out of state, and we didn't want to. If we reduced it to say 5, we didn't want to run into issues with respect to quorums or having very low approval votes. So we left it at 7. And then finally, with respect to the powers of the president pro temp of council, we acknowledge that the charter itself is a little unclear, a little loosely defined with respect to the powers of the president pro temp. But we thought that the best way to handle that is at the beginning of each session, perhaps every January, council should adopt rules governing the role of the president pro temp and perhaps add specific powers each year, adjusting them as experience dictates. And I believe with respect to that, Councilman Press also felt that we ought to include those changes in the charter amendments. So those were the substantive changes. There were a number of mechanical changes, which were part of Exhibit 3 to the report of the committee. Most of those were cleanup changes, things to make the charter consistent with either state law or other provisions of the charter. And then adding some clarification with respect to, for example, where the meetings of council can be held and things like that. So let me pause there and see if anybody has any questions. And I would invite Councilman Press or Councilwoman Deacon, who both participate in the committee, to offer any other thoughts. Well,
You go first. Oh, all right. Well, I guess I'm the minority report in this matter. I guess I'm the reason we have this committee. It all started back in December of 21 when newly elected council people were given their orientation. And it came up during the orientation in 2021. And then I guess the committee was approved in maybe March or April of 22, something like that. One reason for doing a charter review is I don't think there's ever been one done before, at least not in the memory of anybody who was around. So it's just seemed like a good thing to do. But I will admit, I had an agenda, if you will. I do think that significant zoning changes, not every zoning change, but significant ones should go to the voters. Indeed, I've heard Karen say that would happen. I've heard Craig during candidates night and David during candidates night say that would happen. So it seems to me appropriate that it would be put into the charter. And I think the proposal is a step backward. The proposal codifies the fact that council can do it as long as they have a public hearing before doing it. So I actually think the proposal of the committee is moving backward from where we already are, at least the people around this table, what we've said we want to do. On the income tax credit, in my mind, it's an issue of fairness. To change the tax rate, we have to go to the voters. To change, but for people who work elsewhere and live in the village, it seems to me their tax ought to be subject to the same rules. If we allow council to change the credit without going to the voters, we're putting a different standard for people who don't work in the village than people who do work in the village. Last but not least, I wouldn't fight over this one, but I think in the interest of balancing the legislative and the executive branches, I think it would be more appropriate to have a president of council as well as a mayor. That's what they do in Chagrin Falls. So there you go. That's my minority report.
So I would add that we talked extensively about the zoning issue and, wanting to try and find a way to see if we could, devise a charter provision that would allow it to go to the voters. And we wrestled with how do you define significant, how do you define, obviously minor zoning changes shouldn't go to the voters. That would be unwieldy. So we couldn't come up with how to really define what those were. So the solution was to have a referendum on which applies to any zoning matters. And 10% is a pretty low threshold. So if council did, take an action that was really contrary to the voters' wishes, I felt that we'd have a referendum and it would go to the voters, unless we were wise and already sent it to the voters, which I think has been kind of the practice and the thinking, although you can't count on that. On the tax credit issue, I think we felt that it was very unlikely to ever change. It hadn't really been changed. And if council was to change it, it would be in order to deal with a financial issue that needed to be addressed quickly. And on the council pro tem, I think we also discussed that in order to have flexibility each year with how we're running council, that upfront defining it that year as to how we wanted to operate gave us the most flexibility.
Yeah, I think the credit thing. Sorry, I think the credit thing it would have to be a crisis of some sort to make any change to that.
Well, we actually did think about, council did think about it just 2 years, 3
Yeah,
years ago.
you are correct. We didn't know where things were going, and then fortunately, things turned around.
But
As far as zoning, I've always felt that if it affects the whole in a big way, it should go to the voters. But I can't say that everybody feels that way, but you know, the day-to-day things are minor things where it's, 50 feet here or whatever it is, I think is kind of, that would be silly.
I agree.
It would hold up work, it would hold up sales, it would.
It was always to be significant zoning
Exactly.
changes. And if we put that in the language, in the charter, and we can fight over what significant means, if and when we ever have to, I doubt we ever would have to do that.
Maybe you'd have to get
At least
council
the
to
intention
do
was
something
major
as
changes
opposed to
go
the
there.
charter. So in other words, maybe council would discuss what would be significant to council, and maybe do that at the beginning of the year as opposed to doing the charter.
I mean, we had a big discussion over it. Legal counsel didn't feel like we tried to define it and we couldn't come up with it.
Right.
I mean, that was the issue. And so we came up with, another mechanism to protect the voters' wishes.
Right. And the village has run very well for a very, very long time. So I can't say the charter is bad. It's,
Didn't
No,
say it's
and-
bad.
In my
but it
definition
can
of
be better.
significant, it revolves around the lot sizes. And so.
That-
if there were
that
any
is
change
significant.
From a 5 acre lot and one single family home per lot size, in my mind, and my public comments have been consistent on this, that needs to go in front of the voters. But to hamper zoning and planning and zoning or other things, have to do a referendum every time something comes up. but-
Nobody ever suggested that, okay?
Yeah, but
Sean will be-
significant
Sean will be
is
my.
in the eye of the
my
beholder,
witness here.
so.
It was always significant zoning changes. Nobody ever suggested anything to the contrary.
Yeah, I would, Councilman Press is correct, although so is Councilwoman Deacon. We weren't able as a group to say, okay, what's significant? And I think the law director would concur with that it can be.
You really have to define it.
You have
Yes.
to define
You
it.
can't just say significant or write significant in the charter, right?
Some comments, if I may. The first two items, zoning and income tax, I agree completely with Michael. I'm less interested in the latter two. As far as zoning is concerned, the comprehensive plan demonstrates that the guts of our being as a village here is our zoning. And I think people are beginning to realize that. They want to defend it. They want to have a say in how it might be changed. And I think giving people the vote on significant zoning changes is absolutely essential. I once worked with a cagey old guy who told me that never let a definitional problem stop you getting what you need in a contract. Always try to define it. And if you can't, take it as far as you possibly can. Don't go vague because you can't define it. Push the other way. So on zoning, I'm 100% with Michael in this score. On taxation, I do believe in taxation with representation, and the best representatives of the people are the people. So I think that if we get into a jam where reducing the tax credit is the only way out, we are really screwed up because we have so many other options before we get there. And if we do get there, I think people, because Michael says it discriminates against people who work outside the village, people we might be trying to attract in the context of the comprehensive plan. And therefore, I think that should go to the voters. Absolutely.
So Sean, I've got two items. And thank you to you and your committee and the other five for putting in, a year's worth of work on this and doing all that research and for writing a document that's pretty understandable. So mine are one, president of council and pro tem and 2 committees. If I understand now we already have a president of council, which essentially is the mayor who is president of council but doesn't vote.
Correct.
So the comment was, we don't have a president of council. I think we do. What we may need is a little better definition of what the president pro tem does or doesn't do when he or she has that role, when the mayor can't fill that role.
That is correct.
Okay. Number 2, could you explain a little bit who the committees are reporting to? I mean, there's a section here on the committees of council, which sounds like and we've got 20 some odd committees. Are these committees that are formed by and run by council, or are these run and formed by the mayor, or do we have a mix of them? And
The way to look at the committees is there are committees that are required by the charter. And then there are committees that are formed by legislation or by ordinance or resolution by the council. And in the latter case, I'll defer to Todd on this one.
The mayor makes the appointments, but
Right.
they're confirmed.
Confirmed by council.
Right.
Right.
And we're required to have certain committees.
okay, and I'm okay with whatever is all agreed to. I just don't want 2 sets of committees on everything. We don't need 2 safety committees, one for council, one of the village, a budget committee, a zoning committee.
The way to look
You know,
at it, the way to look at it, at least the way I do, is that the committees that are required by the charter have to exist and have to function. The ones that are created or appointed by the mayor and approved by, or created by council can be disbanded and not exist.
Okay. So
Closed
the
out.
insurance committee could be an example of one. The insurance committee
Absolutely.
could be one that could be
That's a
closed out and
convenience for the
disbanded.
village. Right.
If we need one, the
The
mayor
cemetery.
appoints them and council approves it.
Right.
But something like planning and zoning is in the charter, right? So that has to,
Exactly.
okay, thank you.
That's it.
Any other question?
Yes, what is our next step, Mayor, with regard to this report?
I think you send me home and you debate it
Well,
in that order.
Let me frame it this way. Council has plenary authority to put this on the ballot, put anything on the ballot for a charter amendment. It will cost money if you have a special election to put something on the ballot. If it's taken to a general election, it won't cost you anything. So those are November elections. I'm not quite sure about the March election. When I talked to the Board of Elections about that, the person I talked to wasn't sure about the primary election, and this year it's in March because it's presidential primary. And we have to have a 60-day lead time before the election. So action would need to be taken by council prior to the 60 days and get the ordinance putting it on the ballot down to council or down to the Board of Elections by that 60th day. And that's in early January this year. So those are the parameters of that. So anything that council as a whole would want to put on the ballot, you have the authority to do that by ordinance.
It sounds like it's going to go to the fall election, anything anyway, so you've got more time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we make an observation in the report, and I think the entire committee agreed with this, is that council threshold issues, do you want to put something at all on the ballot? Because it doesn't cost to put it on to just put it on the ballot in November, but there's going to be an educational aspect. You'll spend some time and money dealing with that, because if you just plop this in front of the voters with no explanation, you really don't know what's going to happen.
And council has some discretion in dividing it up into categories so
Right.
that you're not going to have 30 issues on the ballot. You might divide it up into 5 or 6 and lump them together, which is
Right, which
appropriate.
is the way we approach
Ballot language
our
is
report.
difficult to draft because I've done it many times. And then the Board of Elections, and actually it's the Secretary of State that finally approves the ballot language.
Okay, so we.
Not a simple task.
So we surely have time to discuss this and
Yep.
decide how to.
A quick response to
Thank you.
your
Yeah.
comment.
Was there any thought about changing the lid on the number of employees, things like that, like for police, for example, full-time, and increasing those numbers?
I don't believe that's a charter issue.
That's,
Councilman.
that's a village issue. That's not a charter issue.
It's in the charter. It says you're only allowed to have X number of full-time policemen.
That's in the codified ordinances, I believe, Mr. Wells.
Okay.
In all fairness, there were issues that didn't get discussed. I mean, we didn't talk about term limits, for example. We didn't talk about the requirements for running for council, how long you had to be a resident. There are things that are in the charter that we could have chosen to discuss that we did not discuss.
7 o'clock.
Needs to leave.
Okay.
Yep, whatever.
Quick point, if I may.
Okay.
You talk about education. I don't think the village will need educating on the zoning issue if it were to come to voters. I don't think they need education on reducing the tax credit. I think it will be overwhelmingly supported from the people I've spoken to.
Well,
Okay.
The number of people I've spoken
that's council's decision. It's
to.
not-
Sure. Just a comment.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to thank Councilman Press, Councilwoman Deacon, Bob Reitman, David Hooker, and of course, Janet for all of your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
So you can do now.
Okay, so I'm going to interject right now because Dan Troy joined us this evening and he needs to go to another meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And first of all, thank you for your service to the village. I see you're leaving and congratulations to the mayor-elect. And I guess you're still counting to see who's going to.
Oh, he's elected.
Next year. So anyway, I'm State Representative Daniel Troy. I represent you and I've had the honor of representing the village of Gates Mills since January of this year. You are part of the 23rd district. As you know, we went through redistricting again this time and they pretty much left everything the same. And those districts are good for 8 years until the end of this decade. So Gates Mills Village will be part of the 23rd district, which includes Richmond Heights, Mayfield Village, Gates Mills, and pretty much most of Western Lake County communities and part of the city of Mentor. Now, that may be subject to change because there's now a movement afoot to create an independent redistricting commission with signatures going out, the effort being led by former Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor. So that may pass, and if that gets on the ballot, passes in November of 2024, maybe seeing these districts changed again. But anyways, I've just been happy to represent you, to let you know that just a couple of quick updates. And I'm on the Finance and Appropriations Committee. I'm the ranking member of Ways and Means, and I had all those issues come through that committee that the Rita representative mentioned there. And very, very bluntly, it is a very business-friendly legislature, the makeup of the legislature. So some of these municipal income tax changes have kind of been at the behest of business. There's such a number of folks in the General Assembly that you don't like the idea of taxes in general. And I try and indicate to them that, well, there is a requirement of services being provided by our governmental entities. So it's a necessary evil and all that. So just a couple of other things in the budget bill. And she said House Bill 33, that was the budget bill. It was 5,140 pages. So I'm glad she zeroed in on the one section there and all that. And that has been enacted. One of the good things we did in that budget, I know, which is important to Gates Mills Village, and I've been part of the Chagrin River Watershed Partners as a trustee, is that we significant continued investment in H2 Ohio, and then extending that not to just to Lake Erie, but a lot of the streams that obviously, like the Chagrin River here, that feeds into Lake Erie. So a continued commitment to doing whatever we can to make sure that we clean up the waterways in Ohio. And eventually, obviously, that's going to protect our Great Lake Erie. The big issue that seems to be coming in front of the Ways and Means Committee, which I am the ranking member on, is the issue of property taxes these days because of property values going up considerably and a concern about the growth. And I've tried to explain to some of my colleagues that, you know, there are some lids on property taxes from House Bill 920. If your property values go up 30%, your taxes aren't going to go up 30%. But there are certain areas like the 10 inside mills, any charter millage, and I don't know if Gates Mills Village has charter millage. I know my city of Willowick does. The 20 mil floor on schools and possibly some emergency millage is not subject to those reduction factors. So there will be increase in taxes. You know, I've tried to argue that, listen, we want to see people's property values go up because that's a return on investment they've made. But we got to make sure that your increasing property values doesn't result in huge increases in your property taxes. And in some cases, windfalls for some of the entities collecting those. So, one of the things that I was successful in getting in the budget was language to create a 10-member joint committee, 5 senators, 5 representatives, to study the entire Ohio property tax system and come up with reforms of that. And I'm happy to say I was one of the members appointed to that. It's 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats in the House, and the same configuration in the Senate and all that. And we're going to start meetings early January and all that. But I think, you know, it's an area that really is very complex. As I've said, there's only 2 people in Ohio that understand Ohio's property tax system, and they disagree. So it's something that we really need to address. And obviously, as a former city councilman in Willowick, I understand the very important role that you as the village legislature and executive branch should do in terms of providing services for the citizens. So that's some of the things that we'll be working on, and hopefully we'll take a little break from constitutional amendments on the ballot, which we've had quite a few of lately, and all that, and start to address some of these things. But again, the state of Ohio is in pretty good shape. Our revenues are coming in even greater than expected. And, I've tried to say that maybe this is the time we need to address some of these things that maybe in the past we said, boy, we'd love to do that, but we just don't have the money. And sometimes it's a fight between, do we put more money into, increasing the rate for our direct service providers in aging facilities or home health care, or direct service providers in our developmental disability programs or mental health programs and all that? Or, do we, and what I've really argued is I would rather see, rather than income tax cuts from the top, I'd rather see us take a big chunk of that and upgrade the homestead exemption, because a lot of our senior citizens on fixed incomes are really struggling with their property taxes. So, I'm all for tax cuts, but I'd like to see them targeted to where they're mostly needed. And so, again, I'm just happy to represent you folks in Columbus, and certainly available for any questions or any issues you have. I have had a few calls from constituents in Gates Mills Village questioning, about the condition of 322 going through the village. And I know there's kind of an argument between ODOT and the village as to who's responsible for that. So I don't know if there's anything going on with 322 in terms of that. I would be more than happy to, use my office to convene a joint meeting with you folks, with the Cuyahoga County Engineering firm department and ODOT to see what needs to be done in terms of upgrade or some repaving or taking care of state. I came down 322 through got off at 271 and came down 322. I mean, didn't seem to be in that bad a shape to me, but then I didn't hit up the hill the other way toward Chesterland, so I don't know. So anyway,
thank you
again, Mayor, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'd love to be here more often, but Tuesdays, you meet one Tuesday a month, and Tuesdays is committee day in Columbus, and thank God, because of the Thanksgiving holiday, there were no committees this week, so I'm happy to be here. And certainly if there's any questions, I do have to be at Mentor, because Mentor Board of Education, I have a resolution for the fellow that runs their Tech Cred program, was awarded the statewide Tech Cred Man of the Year or whatever and all that. But certainly glad to be here, and it's all reminiscent of my council days, many of the issues that you are talking about today.
Thank you for taking the time to come and visit us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, Okay, thank you. No questions? Good. I'm glad she handled all the tax questions, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Dan.
My
What-
city of Willowick, I just would point that out. I know there was some discussion about rezoning by a vote of the people. My city of Willowick, when I was on city council, was one of the first communities to install in our charter rezoning by a vote of the people. And it's still part of the charter. Every once in a while, the developers and some of the elected officials try to get rid of it because they say it holds things up. You know, it's too cumbersome and all that. But twice that's been defeated attempts to do that and all that. And then for the little things we got around that was what was called variances. I mean, when you have little zoning changes, you kind of classify them various. But I agree, if you're making massive changes, probably I've always felt let the people speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Okay. Next is our financial report. Steve?
Good evening, everyone. In your places today is the financial report. It's also been posted to the website at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. This is the financial report for the 10 months ended October 31st. The financial statements were provided to the clerk, the council, and mayor in advance of the November council meeting. Two things that we'll notice in the general fund that we'll have some comment on. Number one, for the first time, we'll have some speeding camera enforcement revenue. And secondly, our municipal income tax numbers came in strong in the month of November, which are not reflected in the numbers because they're November, but they are indicative of what will be a $2 million, probably 2,000,001, maybe 2,000,002 year. We had been looking a little light the last several months. We had been cautioning people about that. A good month in November of $250,000 will help us get back to where we wanted to be. Okay, so for the month of October, the revenue was $491,500, consisting of $264 of municipal income tax revenue, $144,000 of camera gross receipts, and $83,000 of other revenue. The real estate taxes, as you know, are dependent on the seasonal nature of them, the payments made by property owners, and the county remittances to the village. For the 10 months, our real estate tax receipts are slightly ahead of the prior year and budget by $50,000. That's not unusual compared to prior months. Municipal income tax revenue was $264,000 in October. We've been reporting for several months that our receipts in 23 have been less than 22. And for the 10 months in 23, our income tax revenue is now $1,859,000, below prior year amount by $900,000. As discussed, we had conferred with Rita on several times during 23. In the month of November, we received another $250,000, which will bring the year-to-date collections through November 30th to $2,110,000. That number essentially is what we have in the budget for 24. December has not always been a consistent month. There are months where it's as low as 45,000. There was a month about 3 years ago where it was several hundred thousand. So again, collections on a monthly basis are not really predictable. As to the traffic camera enforcement program, you'll remember that the way this will be handled is that the gross receipts come to the village, and those will be reported in the revenue lines. The expenditures that we have, which is the municipal court and our share of GATSO's operating costs, are in the expenditure line. So if you look in the financial statements, you have to look at three different numbers to come up with what the net contribution is to the village. But in the financial statements, if you do go in them, the gross collections were $144,000 during the month of October. We remitted $82,000 to the other parties, that is the court and GATSO. And so the net contribution to the village is $62,000. These amounts exclude the deposit that we remitted to the municipal court to get the program started. Other sources of revenue total $700,000. That excludes the traffic cam. They're favorable to the prior year by about $124,000 due to higher receipts in other categories. Those include the cell tower, higher rental income from the Mills Building and interest on investments. As to the expenditures, the month of October was $528,000. Those of you that listen to this every month, you will remember that our operating costs on a monthly basis are usually $450,000 to $500,000, a little higher this month. Expenditures for the year were $5,483,000 compared to $5,100,000 last year. That's an increase of about 13%. The police department is on budget. In the fire department, we spend greater amounts on personnel costs and on the ambulance EMS costs. The additional volume of fire calls requiring our fire department personnel has risen 32% this year to 184 calls, including a record 42 calls in the month of July. As to EMS, those calls are up 21% this year to 182 calls. Our EMS costs are $447,000 compared to $354,000 last year due to more emergency calls. We are not expecting any more invoices from Mayfield Village this year as they invoice us on a quarterly basis. In the service department, we spent additional funds on upgrading the Mills Building, looking at possible expansion of Burton Court and the new front loader purchase. For the first 10 months, the village operated with a general fund shortfall of $227,000. We had budgeted a break-even amount, roughly $19,841. Our results are lower than budgeted due to lower income tax receipts, higher fire and EMS costs to start the traffic program, and some emergency repairs such as the Gates Mills Boulevard. It is possible we could end the year with a shortfall of several $100,000 rather than break even. This has been reported for the last several months. As to our cash balance, the general fund at the end of October was $7,584,000 compared to the beginning of the year of $7,800,000. The other funds we're required by statute or contract to retain special purpose funds. Cash in those accounts is $2,217,000 in October. During the month, we did distribute to the Land Conservancy their second payment of $51,500. We paid this about a month and a half early so that they had a clear view on what their balances will be at the end of the year, as well as facilitate their plans for 2024. The Budget and Finance Committee met several times, twice actually. Those minutes are being prepared. Janet's drafted them and I have them with me. We'll be posting those to the website when complete sometime this week. I'll comment on Budget and Finance Committee matters during the committee reports. If there's any questions on the October statements, be happy to try to answer them. Michael.
Steve, one question. You said the net traffic cam number was 52,000. Does that allow for collectability? Have you aimed off for not being able to collect 100% of it? Or is that the 100% figure, presuming everyone pays?
It was 62,000. I think you said 52, just to be for the record. And that is what we have received so far. So if there were other collections, that number would increase.
Thank you.
It's the more conservative way to look at it. Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions?
But Steve, I wasn't able to make the budget meeting, but was any consideration given to putting the expenses for the cameras under administrative and not under police? Because it looks like it adds, it's basically 10% of the police department's budget, some of the expenses that were there. And so
we didn't specifically talk about that. I'll give that some thought. We also don't want the administrative cost to look so high. That would be a result of that. But we have other communities that we can take a look at and see how they're reporting it. And perhaps the auditor of state, which audits the numbers as a point of view.
thanks.
Thanks for the observation, though. Yeah, David.
I was just to make the point that regardless of where you put those sets of revenues and expenses, I think it's important they're in one place. So we can see what the impact is net very easily. You have the expenses in one column, in one budget, and revenues in another. It doesn't get together.
Yeah, that's true, but there's only three numbers. It's not
better if they're close together. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just comment, and maybe Janet can correct this? It's my understanding that this statement that we get is our format that was designed several years ago, I believe, by Jerry Tone. This is not a statutory requirement. Janet has all of her accounts that she has to do. But we have discretion to change the format of this report or add subsegments or do things like that, such as have a sub-segment saying this is the revenue from traffic cameras, these are the expenses.
Mhm.
So you have to give thought to that.
Mhm.
This is not a state requirement that we put one number here and another number there.
That is correct.
Okay.
That format we used in 1990. So that format's been around for
Right.
literally 30, if not longer years. Doesn't mean we can't amend it. As we do with, I think, ambulance income, we make a footnote somewhere that says ambulance income is X, Y, and Z. So a simple presentation might be to add a footnote or a little line somewhere that says net traffic camera contribution to the village. Gross receipts minus the expenses. We can take a look at that. Thank you, Chip.
I was gonna ask Tom Majewski, but I don't see him, but can you comment? I don't think
Rob's here.
Rob will answer.
Okay, about the EMS expense. So maybe not now, but with your report, then if you would comment on the increase in EMS and what your experience is from other communities, Rob, and the trend, it's disturbing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Steve. Next is mayor's report. I've got a few things. First of all, I want to thank we had our service lunch the beginning of November put on by our Gates Mills Community Club and Gates Mills Garden Club. And they do a really, really lovely job with it for us every year. And it was a very nice event. So we thank them for that. And then I got a thank you note from our Mayor Schneider and members of Gates Mills Council, just a note to say thank you for the wonderful party and the Yeti cooler. And I plan on using it often in my retirement, Tom. So that was very nice. And the other thing is I'd like to introduce Dan Kish, who's here, and he wants do you want to make a little announcement about giving, or do you want me to just say it? It's up to you, Dan.
I got a proposal to give the back of my lot for a cemetery. We don't have one. We have two of them, but they're full. It could be pretty complex. I don't know, because I want to give my house to the Historical Society because of my old furniture, which is up to 200 years old. For viewing or whatever they want to do with it. How long I'm going to be on this earth, God knows.
Dan has been very kind and very generous. He wants to donate the property to the village and live out his life there, which we hope is another long time.
Yeah, but you still have the cemetery right away. You still need that.
He's been doing a lot of planning, and he's going to work with Todd, our law director, on it, with his lawyer.
That's correct. And I got not one lawyer, I got another one coming in. They looking after me too.
Yeah.
There's different ways of doing this. One proposal is this could be benefiting me. I give you the whole property and I pay you rent till I die.
Well, we'll let them figure that out, Dan.
Yeah, well, these are just ideas. I pay $1 a year or something, and you pay, I won't have to pay any taxes because you own it. Looking at it that way, so that's gonna go up a little bit. There's nothing really cheap in Gates Mills unless you have a old rundown building, and most of those are torn down. And I don't want to put any more toilets in. That historical thing, it's a maze with what the head will do with putting a wheelchair access or toilet. I put like a 20 by 20 area. About 15% of that is toilet. So I really can't put any of my furniture in there. I can put some odds,
And you don't have to do any of that.
odds and ends.
We thank you for planning and doing these things and thinking of the village. I know Mary Ann, if she were here, she'd be very proud of that. She was very involved.
Attention, because I'm not used to having your meetings over here. That little, I thought we were having that little one there. Where we're all close together and we could chew each other up a little bit. My wife.
They were very loyal attendees for a lot of years.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We-
Actually, 9 years this month.
Wow,
He's gone.
that time flies. Well, you've been so generous.
So-
It's just amazing. We really appreciate it and glad your attorney's looking out for you too.
But going back to my property though, there's a foundation in the back that the Bonds Battles lived in there. And the fire department, I heard, burned that down. I'm here over 60 years, but the fire department burned it down and did a half-ass job putting, you can still see the foundation and loaded with garbage, if you want to call it that. And then up front, I do have pictures if you want to see it. This is from, Sally Burke.
This house was
Thank you.
This house was, also known as, church or some sort. I think if you get to an old map of Gates Mills, you'll see on Battles and County Line, right on the corner, there was a house or something right on the corner. And that's supposed to be the picture of what was on the house. And this came from Sally Burke from the Historical Society. And
A lot of fun facts that you're learning as things progress here.
no. So if there's any questions, try to answer. If there isn't any. we're gonna
Well, there may be some down the road, Dan.
yell. Believe me.
We really appreciate it and thank you very much.
You.
By the way, this raises a question that I think we might want to consider a policy that anybody that comes and speaks in front of the mic has to have on a Michigan shirt, not an Ohio State shirt, please. So,
I think I'll keep that out of minutes.
oh, well, maybe I don't have a consensus on that, so.
No.
Might be in the minority, Chip.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Oh, he has a say in that too.
Okay.
Oh. Are you on committee report?
Are you
No, clerk.
appointing Megan?
Oh, yes, we have one appointment of Megan Perez to be co-chair of the Mayfield School Liaison Committee. She would be replacing
Jim
Jim
Stafford.
Stafford. And he's still going to be involved, but he wants her to co-chair with,
Sean O'Hagan.
yes, thank you. So we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry. I can't type and talk. Patton,
Yes.
Alwarder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welch.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, clerk's report, none. Committee reports.
Larry Frankel asked me to read this. The community menorah lighting will be on Thursday, December 7th at 5:30 PM. It's the first night of Hanukkah. This is a community event and all villagers are welcome to attend. Following the lighting ceremony, there will be refreshments served at Burton Court at
Say-
Sarah's,
You say 5:30?
5:30.
5:30.
December 7th at 5:30 PM. Traditional potato pancakes, latkes, will be served along with warm beverages. This is a great opportunity to show community support during these times of hatred. Thank you.
Any other reports?
Yeah, just a quick update on cell tower. As I think everybody's aware, the actual tower has now been erected on the Gilmore campus. And it's expected that Verizon will have their equipment up and go live, maybe January, probably more like February. And then not sure when the next carrier might go up, but they expect another carrier shortly thereafter.
Thank you.
Broadband
Yes.
committee report. So following up from our workshop, I did talk to Hunting Valley regarding, Steve, your suggestion that, we see if we can speak with Ohio Gig or if Hunting Valley could share details with us. Brian Coughlin said that not at this time. The matter has not gone to council, and in fact, they are still negotiating. So it's probably going to come to council either in December or January. So we've got, 30 to 60 days before they can have a discussion with us around that relationship. So we might want to think about whether or not we want to approach them directly at this time.
Thank you.
If I can just add to that, in the meantime, we did get, I got a brief proposal from Reed Consulting, just maybe even today, to do that additional piece of work that we asked them to take a look at. So I'll pass it
Oh,
on
good.
to you and
Okay,
Ann, and take a read of that. We may just delay that or ask them to do something differently.
Yeah, the other interesting thing that came up, Todd, maybe you can weigh in on this. You told me that they did not go to a formal RFP process because it's expensive. So honestly, I don't understand the RFP, if any, rules around, what can and can't be done. And it might be helpful if at some point you could guide us there.
Okay. It starts with an RFQ, request for
RFQ,
qualifications. And then you choose the best that you feel will do the best work, and then negotiate with that person.
But is it
And-
required or
It-
how does that
It's
work?
required in certain circumstances. I'm not sure, you're looking for someone to actually install this, is that correct?
Right, we're looking for,
Well, it should go to competitive bid if it's gonna be over $75,000, which it is. Specifications need to be put together to go out for a competitive bid. And I don't know how they're getting around that.
Oh, they're not actually spending any money. However, they are guaranteeing some debt.
right.
Hmm.
Right.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Do you mind, yeah, apparently they didn't feel that they had to go through a formal process.
They did talk to three entities.
They talked to at least three.
Yeah.
The original finalists were Lit Communities and Spectrum. And then they ended up going with the third party.
So I think at this point, we left the workshop anticipating that we would do something quickly with Hunting Valley. That's probably 6 weeks to 2 months off.
Right.
Yeah, I think they're hoping to get it done by the end of the year, aren't they, Lori?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a council meeting in December, but if it doesn't get done there, it would be the following meeting, and I think they meet the second Tuesday. If I'm remembering right. But they're still negotiating the financing terms.
And they could do a special meeting.
You're right, they could do a special meeting. He did say, oh, no, we're moving fast, but, they still have to go, those two hurdles to pass.
On another committees, if I can, we had three committees the last couple weeks. The Wage and Benefit Committee, and these are all minutes that'll be finalized in the next day or two, and then we'll have them available for those that want them. The Wage and Benefit Committee met on November 9th. We took a look at health, dental, and life insurance renewals. You'll see some of those items in your package later on today for completion and council's approval. We were able to also meet with the insurance subcommittee. There's a resolution on our health insurance renewal and our dental renewal in the package as well. Overall, to walk away, we increased the wages of all village levels at 3.25% this year, going into 24. That's pretty close to the neighboring communities, pretty close to CPI indicators of 3 to 3.5%. We did previously talk about the fire department levels back in September with the transition, so those levels were not changed, but all other levels were increased at 3.25%. We also had a budget committee meeting on November 8th. We focused primarily on our gross revenues. We spent a fair amount of time talking about traffic cameras and how early it still is in the process and what a set of figures would be. The committee encouraged us to be conservative, and we had conservative calculations to look at. And so in the second set of budget numbers, we lowered the revenue and the expenses to a more conservative level. We also talked about the policy for our investments, and there were some specific questions that will need to get reworked into the investment policy statement. We did include in the expenditure category at that time two items. One was $25,000 as a placeholder for necessary improvements to our tennis and pickleball courts, and another $25,000 to begin to look at what we can do with senior services here in the village. Neither of those amounts are just placeholders, but we wanted to get something in the budget to start to work with elements in the community comprehensive plan that need to get attended to. At that time, our budget was about $7.2 million in revenues and expenses. We had a follow-up Budget and Finance Committee meeting on the 15th. We focused primarily on expenses. Well, that included the 3.25% increase in wages. We also talked to all the department heads. They were there for the meetings, fire, admin, service, and police, and worked through their budgets and their suggestions. Overall, I think the committee members all felt comfortable, and we reflected those numbers in the appropriation that you'll get today for salary increases and wages. We need those amounts so that we can get them in the system and be able to pay people at the end of December their new wages versus the current wages. We did have some more work to do on the overall budget, though. There was a good conversation at the committee about how conservative we are, especially in that we've had a little disappointment this year in the municipal income tax revenue, though it's rebounded. And secondly, the traffic camera program and how conservative we should be there. So I did not ask for the budget to be approved at that point. We agreed that we would come back over the next week or two, refine the numbers, and then represent those to the Budget and Finance Committee. We'll still target, in my mind, what I'll call a balanced budget, something in the range of 7 million too. But we'll see what the committee wants to go with at that point. We'll also finalize the investment policy statement. And Michael, we will update our long-range plan numbers once we have the budget approved. That's the Budget, Finance, Wage, and Insurance Subcommittee reports.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything with Land Conservancy?
The annual meeting of the Land Conservancy, let me get the right date here, is Monday. It's not Monday. Oh. Monday, December 4th at 6 p.m. here. And there'll be a speaker, there'll be refreshments, there will be afterwards an election of new officers. So please join us and come hungry. Actually, Scott Broom is doing a boil I don't know, a southern boil. So anyway, we'll get to, we'll get to, we'll get.
Low
get a look
country
at his-
boil, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
Sandra,
thanks for reminding me.
can you comment on the last board meeting and where they came out, where the Conservancy came out on the public access issue, or is it premature to talk about that?
You know, it's probably premature to talk about it, but what Michael's referring to is the fact that the Land Conservancy is going through the renewal process for its authorization through the Land Trust Alliance. And so different policies need to be reviewed. Essentially, what I will say is that the position of the Land Conservancy has been and continues to be that its properties are restricted from access. What we are looking at is a way to kind of strengthen that restriction, but at the same time consider that there are two properties that have been publicly accessed over time and would contribute to the public's ability, villagers in particular, to really enjoy property that they've contributed to over the years through their through levy taxes. So that was the discussion and the approval. We're kind of slowly working through how we would implement that and communicate that. So thanks for the question. That was an important issue.
Anything else? Any other committees? Okay, thank you. Next is police. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Everybody should have received a copy of my monthly report. Be happy to take any questions. If there are no questions, that'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Service Department, and Dave is not here. So Chris, do you want to say a couple things?
A couple comments in Dave's absence. First, I hope he's feeling better. Second, regarding Mayfield Road, I know that Mr. Troy mentioned Mayfield Road. Just so everybody's aware, Mayfield Road was just resurfaced about 5 years ago. There are a few bumps. That's primarily where the concrete joints are reflecting through the asphalt. But 5 years ago, we spent about $2 million on Mayfield Road. We removed and replaced all the asphalt curbs, replaced them with concrete curbs, replaced all the storm sewer crossovers on the road, resurfaced the entire road from one end of the village to the other. That was about a $2 million project. Last year, we just completed the intersection upgrade, which was a safety upgrade of Mayfield Road and Chagrin River Road with the new signals and the offset turn lanes. That was upwards of $500,000. You can expect that roadway to be on target to be resurfaced again in about 5 more years. So it's on target for around 2028. That will move forward or backward, depending on the condition of the road and how funding works through ODOT. Also, for this year's road program, the wholesale resurfacing of Chestnut, Hawthorne Farms Drive, and Blackberry has been completed. There's a little bit of road edge cleanup work to do, the dirt next to the road. Those are the projects where we had the potential to have higher than anticipated costs and get into our contingency allowance depending on the condition of the road. Once we milled the asphalt off, I'm happy to report there were no surprises. So those 3 roads came in approximately $60,000 under budget if you include the contingency money. So we saved some money on those. Bunch of catch basins, I think 10 of them were rehabilitated on Old Mill coming down the hill from west to east. And then we also have some drainage work that's going to be completed on Som Center Road between the circle and the driveway to Gilmore, and a variety of patching, Gates Mills Boulevard, Mayfield Road in a few areas, and then some other patching work on West Hill between Mayfield Road and Gates, and then on Gates Road from West Hill around to Mayfield should be taking place within the next 2 weeks. The Hill Creek Culvert Headwall extension, the headwall's been poured. It's currently curing. Next week, they'll be backfilling it and doing all the cleanup on the site. So I'd expect all the infrastructure work to be completed within the next 2 weeks. And then I will be pestering contractors to get bills in as quickly as possible so Janet can get them paid and everything can be accounted for properly in 2023. That concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, you wanted to comment on the Mayfield Road culvert.
Oh, yes. Also, the Mayfield Road culvert project is out to bid. We will be opening bids next Friday. And then we'll review them and have a recommendation for council at the December meeting. And then we will be able to move forward with that as quickly as possible in 2024. Thanks, Chip.
Any other questions?
A question. I'm sorry, maybe you said, Chris, the repair on Gates Mills Boulevard.
It should be within the next week or two.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Next is Fire Department. Rob is here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You'll have the report submitted by Chief Majeski that should be in your packets. I do want to draw attention to the second page of that report that has some photos from an incident that we responded to assist the Russell Township Fire Department on October 7th. They had a significant residential structure fire where they called in numerous departments from the region to help. Our fire department responded with a crew of 6 and assisted for 12 hours in both fire attack and water supply, drafting from a pond across the street and assisting them. We are part of their the regional MABUS box, mutual aid box alarm system. And we were called upon and responded immediately. We had 3 firefighters that were back here in the village that responded to another call in town while our other crew is in Russell as well. I'm very proud of the efforts of our crew that were out there. It's a very long and arduous fire. Russell's fire chief and one of their assistant fire chiefs reached out to us and was very grateful for the assistance that we offered them. Russell Township has assisted Gates Mills in structure fires in the village here, as well as our other neighbors. Most recently, the fire by on the residential house on River Road by the Hunt Club. So this event was significant for them, and we were glad we were able to help. Our crew not only got to help them, but also obtained a lot of skills and experience in various functions throughout the incident. So I wanted the council to be aware of that. And when we do get significant incidents, although very rare in the village, we use that MABUS box system, and our neighbors come and assist us as well. So that's been very good. To address the earlier question about emergency medical services, there has been a steady increase in the need for EMS throughout the region, not just here in Gates Mills. All the surrounding departments in the area have seen increases over the last 5 to 10 years, especially communities that have, say, assisted living or medical type facilities in them, but also communities that are completely residential like our own. So the trends and the numbers we're seeing, yes, they're significant as they impact our budget, but they're also doing so for all of our neighboring communities and fire departments as well. So those are things that we're always looking at as we assess costs and look at ways of providing service to make sure that we're being as cost efficient as possible, but also providing the premium care for life safety to the community.
Any insights about the trends?
So I think of it, trends have continued to go up several percentage points every year. I don't have the exact figures. As people tend to age in home, want to stay at home longer. They have additional assistants that come to their house to let people age in place. Their reliance on EMS grows. The close availability of healthcare in the area allows people to stay at home longer. I would say that would probably be the biggest factor. There's a multitude of other factors that all contribute to a steady creep, an increase in that, in those run volumes. I haven't seen it where there's been some years where it's dipped. Occasionally you can have someone that relies on EMS more and more as they get older. And then if they move away or pass away or something, they're no longer calling for that assistance. And then we've seen a drop in calls. Other times we've seen new people that start relying on the service more. So there is some fluctuation year to year, but overall it is higher than normal. And also when you look at the fire department call volumes, we're on a normal year, we're fairly consistent year to year. But when we have storm events cause spikes. There's years where we don't have any significant storms. And then there's years where we have 1 or 2 that cause our call volumes to go up considerably. which also increase costs. Those are really hard to plan for, but we're very reactionary in how we handle that.
Thank you.
Any insight as to what caused that fire in Russell Township?
I have not heard the final determining result of that. I believe it may be electrical in nature. That's what the comments I was hearing, but I'm not sure if that's the official ruling or not.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is ordinance 2023-30. This is third reading. This is an ordinance amending section 95701 of the codified ordinance of the Village of Gates Mills to amend the rental fees, security deposit, police security service charges for the community house rentals, community house rentals.
Move to approve.
Second.
I've got one question on this one. I thought last time we said you only required security from the police department in the event alcohol was served. I thought we said we were going to modify this to reflect that.
Well, it's the number of people is usually where it starts in addition to alcohol. So in other words, there could be an event here with no alcohol at all and we still have security involved.
So if you have a small group, no alcohol, you still have to have police and you have to pay them.
Well, if it's dependent on the number of guests, I mean,
Yes, it always has been. Typically what happens is, somebody puts a request on the community house, staff will go ahead and look at it, review it, and send us a copy of what they decide really, have been writing for.
Yeah, but doesn't the plain reading here say if you have under 100 people, that could be one or two, you have to have one policeman? Isn't that what this says?
Yes.
Okay. I know I've had an event here 2 years ago where there weren't any police. So I'm having.
It's more about directing the parking than anything.
It really is. I mean, we've really never had a problem before. Quite honestly, most times, we leave it to the community house staff to, make a recommendation to us and, it just kind of works itself out. It's really never been that formal of a process. Like the mayor said, typically when alcohol is involved, we always have somebody here. And then, at other times with small, functions and whatnot, if it's 55 people, whatever the number might be, we'll, because you never know exactly what you're gonna get, quite honestly. Sometimes you split hairs over the numbers.
I hear you, but then the ordinance says you have to pay for a police officer, full stop, if you use community house.
Right. Any other questions? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second. Atten?
Yes.
Alwarder?
Yes.
Deacon?
Yes.
Press?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-37. This is second reading. Chip?
This is an ordinance to amend chapter 792 of the codified ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills regarding municipal income tax to adopt updates to conform to Ohio House Bill 33, amending the definition of a pension and adding a definition of a retirement plan and changing references to the Central Collection Agency to the Regional Income Tax Agency. This is second reading, and I have to ask the law director, we can approve this in December and be in time, or do we need to approve it today to meet the end of your deadline, do I recall?
If you put this on third reading in December, I will need to add an emergency clause, so it'll go into effect immediately. So it'll be in effect before January 1st. If you pass it this evening, obviously we have the 30-day period for it to go into effect before January 1.
So this is second reading, so we don't have to talk about it, but I guess the question is, we did hear from Rita. Is there any
It doesn't
particular
sound like
reason
there's-
to wait another?
Doesn't sound like there's anything we can do.
That's would be my understanding.
Go ahead.
If we are to go ahead, I did have one structural question. Chuck Spear did some homework. I sent around his little memo. And Chuck was the first to say he's not a lawyer, he's not an accountant, so maybe he's not a tax authority. But a lawyer, I'm sorry, not on taxes, sorry. Take that back. But it apparently our code is written from Ohio Municipal League language, not from RETA. And this is RETA language that we're attaching, and so it doesn't have to be addressed, but is that?
Not really RETA language, it's Ohio General Assembly language that we have to put in. RETA was good enough to put language together for us so that it made it easier to insert it where it needed to be inserted, regardless of which model code was used.
Okay, I guess my question though is, fine, so this language is what we have to approve. Is it worth looking at our overall tax code and seeing if it's over time, if it's all been consistent? Or is that, does that matter?
I really don't think it's worth the time and the effort to do that.
Okay. All right. It was just a
Now,
question that was
others may
raised.
think differently. It is complicated. But I have not heard anyone complain about the tax code and not being able to understand it. And certainly
That could be because we haven't read it. I don't know. It's
well,
how many
Rita
pages it is.
had no problems administering it. The only issue that ever came up was the SERP issue, and that was resolved by the General Assembly in 2020. And so that's being revised here.
Okay. All right. Well, that was the question that came up. So, so I move to approve, I move to suspend the rules on ordinance 2023-37.
Second.
Atten?
Yes,
Order.
yes, sorry.
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Now I move to approve ordinance 2023-37.
Second.
Atten,
Yes,
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-38. Amended, this is second reading, Craig?
Yes, this is an ordinance amending section 137705 of the Village Building Code to revise the property maintenance code to add maintenance of trees. So the revised, Todd sent the revised version out that included the comments from first reading, and really it's on page 2 at the top. You'll see what was added was all remedial action taken pursuant to this sections shall be accomplished in a manner that will minimize any substantive damage to the overall natural environment as determined by the building official.
That was Mr. Atten's suggestion. I did listen to the discussion from the October meeting, and that's where I derived that language. But there is significant change at the bottom of page 1, which the recommendation was to tie that to trees over and limbs over the right of way as well as above ground utilities. So that's what I did. And also property, threat to safety of persons or property off of the premises upon which the tree is located. So all of that was added.
just make a point, ask a question, I guess. These modifications really are aimed at safety, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm concerned that the underlying document doesn't take care of the environment in a way that it probably should. And that might apply to a number of ordinances we have. I haven't studied it closely. So I'm sort of uncomfortable with this ordinance because it's talking about, in the context of safety, it also has to address cosmetics, which is what the village looks like. So I'm in a bit of a jam, actually. I don't think these changes, if we believe they're all aimed at safety, I've got no problem with them.
These changes are.
Okay.
Now, the ordinance as a whole is not necessarily based on safety. Other than the fact that tall grasses, there can be a health and safety issue as well as noxious weeds.
But, and that's all been in place since 2017. The only
Yes,
change to this is the
And
trees.
it's been in place even before that. We just put it into the International Property Maintenance Code. So we've had that around, and those issues with tall grasses, it's usually rodents and other types of things that tries to get is aimed at. So
Oh, council don't, not council, the service department don't come into my yard and start removing all the weeds. That could cost a fortune.
noxious weeds,
Well, it
poison
doesn't say
ivy.
noxious weeds, it says weeds.
I think it does somewhere here.
Anyway,
Says noxious weeds at the bottom of page 1.
okay. Noxious weeds.
Are prohibited.
Noxious means they can kill people.
Well, but David's point is, first part of that, all premises and exterior property shall be maintained free from weeds.
My premises, that's my
Yeah,
entire.
You'd have a field day of mine too. so-
Yeah.
Well, we could say noxious, yes. I left it the way it was.
Okay.
Is it noxious or nauseous? What is it?
Nauseous.
Nauseous, okay.
Now, let me correct that. If the village would come in at no charge and clear out some of my weeds, that
That's
would
what I was
actually be
waiting for.
nice.
No, they,
Bill you.
they're going.
No problem, so.
So,
Any other questions?
Can you take a comment from the floor?
Is it pertaining to this? What is it?
Well, you know, we live on 10 acres that's solid woods. And if you read this, things like dead limbs. Yeah.
No,
there's
well,
thousands.
Charlie, that hang.
Wait a minute, it's not all dead limbs.
that-
This is only as it relates to,
Right away.
Well,
Right away.
I think there has to be some, it talks about premises. We have 3 parcels.
it's a right of way.
yeah, you may not have the I assume you don't have the most recent revisions.
No,
The
Let's
dead,
put it back on the table.
some, yeah, they were on the
yeah,
table.
the dead, diseased and dying trees and limbs of those trees relates to those that hang over the public right of way,
Only that.
hang over, overhead
All right.
utility lines, or on someone else's property that may cause damage to property or persons.
Okay.
It's
No
limited to
problem.
that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
So do we want to leave this on second reading? I don't have a problem with that. We can,
Sure.
okay.
Okay, next, resolution 2023-41. Chip?
There's a resolution.
Sorry.
This is a resolution exercising the second option year to an existing contract with Rumpke of Ohio, Inc. for solid waste collection, disposal, and recycling services. I believe that this is a January 1st, 2024. So we could make this a first reading, but we'd have to, subject to emergency, and suspend the rules at December meeting. I do know that, it took quite a while. We did a lot of homework, apparently, the last time we set this arrangement up with Rumpke to try to find other entities. So we are a bit dependent on Rumpke. This is in the contract. The rate's already determined. I think the real question is, we probably do need to do this. It'd be kind of hard to stop at this point with not much time left. I think we need to put it on in 2024 to revisit. Is there any other option that we can consider here as far as waste collection? You notice that some of the municipalities, I noticed Pepper Pike, does their own collection. I have no idea if they'd have any interest in providing that service to us. I don't know about other entities, but apparently we've tried to look, so. But at this point, I assume we should just make this a first reading. Is there questions?
I would be in favor of suspending and moving forward. I mean, what's the timeline to put this out for bid?
It's not going to be done before the end of the year.
Yeah, so
Mr. Bigger did recommend this. And you will have to rebid this in 2024 or 20.
Correct, and they're in the middle of doing a recycling, they're trying something new with a select group of 50 homes or something, and so they're kind of in the middle of that also.
Point of clarification, Chuck. If a renewal is part of an existing contract and it's an option that's already clearly defined, we have to go out to bid?
No, I'm saying.
I'm saying if we
The
did,
last option we're exercising.
Yeah, this is the second of two.
So
options,
into
correct.
2025.
Misunderstood you. Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't cost the village anything, right?
No.
This is
Correct.
passing the cost on to the consumer.
It's just extending the contract, and then in 2024, you're gonna have to rebid this and see what's out there.
Yep.
So Chip, I'm having trouble reading can you explain, first year was when?
Oh, the first year?
Mhm.
Well, I believe it
Let me
was a
see.
5-year
4 years
contract.
ago.
Yeah, it's a 5-year, right?
This is
We're in the
23,
fifth.
22,
We're in
21.
fifth.
The first year was
Going-
2020.
Going into year 5.
Right.
Okay.
Rumpke bought another company that was servicing us, so they basically took over the garbage collection.
Not with this. I think the last 5 years it's been Rumpke.
That's a long time ago. A very long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, do we
Any
want
other
to,
questions?
do we want to approve it tonight or? All right, then, I move to suspend the rules.
second,
Patton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
yes,
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
I now move to approve resolution 2023-41.
Second.
Patton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-42. This is first reading. Sandra?
An ordinance to increase the compensation of certain village employees and declaring an emergency. So this and the next three ordinances come at the recommendation of the Wage Benefit Subcommittee meeting held on November 9th that Steve referred to. The increase in wages is 3.2% across the board, with the exceptions being the three fire positions, individuals who were recently promoted and compensated after the retirement of Chief Robinson. Janet did a comparison with neighboring communities, Moreland Hills, Chagrin Falls, Pepper Pike, Orange, Hunting Valley, South Russell, Bentleyville, Mayfield, and Mayfield Heights. The range of increases were from 3% to 4%. The committee utilized the cost of living index and went with a 3.25% increase. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the total cost to the village is going to be about an $135,000 increase for 24, and that's been included in the 24 budget. The other factors or conditions in here, other than the salaries, things that have to do with, vacation and sick time, holidays, et cetera, all remain the same. So I'm gonna move to declare an emergency
Suspend the rules.
Suspend the rule.
or suspend the rules.
Second.
Patton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes,
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
move to approve.
Second.
Patton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
yes,
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance number 2023-43. Sandra?
an ordinance authorizing a contract with Aetna Healthcare to furnish and provide hospitalization and healthcare coverage for village employees and declaring an emergency. This is a 5% increase over 2023. Our agent negotiated with Aetna and brought it down from a 9.11% increase to 5%. Just by way of background, in 2023, in 2022, for 2023, she negotiated it down from 7.6% to 4%. And in 2022, she negotiated it down from 5.5% to 2.1%. So we've had really good experience with our agent. And again, this is a 5% increase over 2023. So I'm going to move to suspend.
Second.
Hatton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
move to approve.
Second.
Hatton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance number 2023-44. Sandra?
an ordinance authorizing a contract with Delta Dental to provide dental insurance coverage for village employees and declaring an emergency. This is an 8% increase from what we had last year. And again, it was negotiated by our agent down from 10%. In 2022 for 23, there was no increase. And in 21 for 22, it was a 4% increase. So I'm going to move to suspend.
Second.
Hatton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
move to approve.
Second.
Hatton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-45. Sandra?
an ordinance declaring the village's intention to enter into a health reimbursement account for 2024 and declaring an emergency. So this is a continuation of a program that's already in place for those employees who are part of our health coverage, up to 1,750 if they have single coverage, and up to 3,500 dollars if they're two-person or family coverage. So this is making them eligible for a reimbursement of 1/2 of their eligible out-of-pocket medical expenses.
I'll second.
Suspend. Ed?
Second.
Thank you. Hatton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
they move to approve.
Second.
Hatton,
Yes.
Alberter,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Kress,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is council matters.
Mayor, I have a statement I'd like to read for council. To members of council, I am deeply disappointed by what is occurring in our village. I feel that the lies, ambiguity, and mischaracterizations that have been put forth during the two most recent elections have sowed seeds of doubt with our residents and contributed to the discourse we find ourselves in. I put myself in the shoes of our residents who received negative campaign letters this election cycle from sitting members of council who were not on the ballot this fall. I would understand and even expect a sitting member of council writing a letter to residents, making their case why another candidate would be a better choice than an incumbent. But in over 20 years of living in the village, I can't recall ever receiving a negative campaign letter from a sitting council person where more time is devoted to the purpose of tearing down colleagues rather than promoting and advocating for candidates they support and think can do better. Or I put myself in the shoes of a new resident who shows up to a council meeting and sees the bickering, arguing, and disrespectful dialogue amongst council members. What must our residents be thinking? As members of council, we all took an oath to faithfully serve this village, and I worry that oath has been forever damaged. While the election results aren't yet official, my statement today would be the same regardless of the outcome. How we do things in this village matters. There is blame to go around, but I fear the rancor will continue regardless of the election outcome, and this is truly unfortunate. Perhaps too much water has gone under the bridge for some of the relationships on council to be repaired. It is my belief that integrity has been lost, trust has been lost, and confidence has been lost. Perhaps hope is what we are left with. And so with the new year nearly upon us, I hope this council can heal the wounds of division and move forward with handling the important affairs of the village in a civil and collegial manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
A couple of minor things. I had a resident complain to me. I didn't check whether it's true or not, but I imagine it is, that the council minutes haven't been posted on the website for we're 2 or 3 months behind.
I don't think so.
Okay.
What? I don't know, but I'll check myself. I think
mean,
they're up.
Gene and I try to stay up with them. I don't know.
I just reviewed October last
Okay.
week.
I didn't check it. I just.
Okay. All right. Thank
They're
you.
always in the council packet as well.
And the other thing I was going to ask about is with Steve, of course, taking over as mayor, we're going to have to find a treasurer. So I was curious as to what the process is for that.
That will be up to Steve.
We'll be working more aggressively on that once the council has been determined for next year.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Lori?
Yeah, I'd just like to maybe comment, Craig, thanks for your concern. I do think that we should set the tone for conduct in the village. And I also would like to see positive comments, positive support. I think we see the negative at the national level. We all decry that. I mean, we turn off the TV sometimes.
You're right.
When we see it. So I think we should take it upon ourselves to set that tone. And I think that that other people in the village look to us, and we're a small community and relationships are really important. So, I think we should consider whether or not we should have a code of ethics. We have, ethics that pretty much deal with things like, conflict of interest and, that type of thing under Ohio law, right, Todd? But we really don't have anything that talks about conduct. And we did take an oath. You're right, Craig. And I think in that oath, if I'm remembering correctly, it talks about support of the village and honesty. And I think those are important values. And I think it's also important how we treat each other and how our employees are treated as well. I happen to work for a great company where we had that type of code in place. People treated each other with respect, and it was a great place to work because of that. So I'd like to consider whether that we do something like that, and that we, commit to being those types of leaders, the kind of leader who's positive, who's forward thinking, who cares about others, and who acts with integrity.
Thank you. Both were very good. Anyone else? Any business from the audience? Okay, then we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Atten,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Sharon.
Oh, hi.
Wow. Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's also one of your biggest fans.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How are you? Pretty good. Nice to see your hair growing. Anyway, he's giving the property.
Coming back.
No, no.
You do whatever you need.
All right, do you want to sign, Karen, or
Yes.
did you get to sign those? I am too. I'm like. Did you sign those? Okay.
Why don't you put your coat on?
I know I was gonna put my gloves on during the meeting. I'm like, "It's freezing in here.
Yeah. Oh, good. Greg.